The house felt emptier than usual since the funeral. Each room echoed with memories of laughter and warmth that had once filled the space. I often found myself standing in the kitchen, staring at the empty chair where my stepson, Lucas, used to sit, his youthful energy a stark contrast to the silence that now enveloped us. At 45, I had never expected to navigate grief in such an intimate way, especially not alongside a boy who was still learning how to cope with loss himself. Lucas had become a ghost in our home. He rarely spoke, his eyes often cast downward as if he were carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. I tried to reach out, but each attempt met with a wall of silence that left me feeling helpless. One evening, while washing dishes after dinner, I heard muffled sounds from his room, sobs that cut through my heart like shards of glass. I hesitated outside his door, unsure whether to enter or retreat back into my own solitude. When I finally gathered the courage to knock softly, he didn't respond. It was then that I noticed a letter peeking out from under his bed, a letter addressed to him from his mother. My hands trembled as I picked it up and unfolded it carefully. The words were filled with love and encouragement, a reminder of her unwavering support even in death. As I read her familiar handwriting, tears streamed down my face. It felt like she was reaching out from beyond the grave to comfort him and me. I tucked the letter back under the bed and retreated to my own room, where shadows danced across the walls in the dim light. That night was restless. Sleep eluded me as thoughts swirled in my mind like autumn leaves caught in a whirlwind. The weight of our shared grief pressed heavily upon me, yet there was something else, a nagging feeling that perhaps Lucas needed me more than ever. But how could I bridge that gap when he seemed so distant? Days turned into weeks as we both navigated our grief silently until one afternoon, while cleaning out an old box in the attic, I stumbled upon an intricately designed bracelet hidden among dusty trinkets. It sparkled under the sunlight streaming through the window, catching my breath momentarily. As I held it in my hand, memories flooded back, of family gatherings and laughter shared over holiday meals. This bracelet had belonged to Lucas's mother. It felt wrong yet oddly comforting to find it now. I decided then and there that this bracelet would be a bridge between us, a token of remembrance and connection. That evening, as Lucas sat quietly on the couch absorbed in a video game, I approached him cautiously and held out my hand with the bracelet resting on my palm. "Lucas," I said softly, "I found something that belongs to your mother." His eyes widened slightly as he looked at me, then back at the bracelet. "What is it?" he asked cautiously. "It's her bracelet," I replied gently. "I thought you might want it." He took it from my hand slowly and examined it closely before nodding silently. There was something profound about this moment, a silent understanding passing between us as he slipped it onto his wrist. But just as quickly as our connection seemed to strengthen, doubt crept back into my mind like an unwelcome guest. What if this gesture only deepened his grief? What if he resented me for trying to fill a void no one could replace? As those questions loomed large in my mind, I resolved to tread carefully moving forward. The next day brought unexpected news. Lucas had received an anonymous text message while sitting at breakfast, a simple phrase, "You need to talk." My heart raced at this revelation. Who could be reaching out? Was someone aware of what lay beneath our surface? The unease settled deep within me like lead. As we both sat silently over our coffee mugs later that morning, me contemplating how best to approach him about this new development, I noticed Lucas's fingers absent-mindedly fiddling with the bracelet on his wrist. It struck me then how fragile our situation truly was. We were teetering on a precipice without even realizing it. That evening brought another twist when Lucas suggested we take a walk together at dusk through Maplewood Park, the vibrant colors of autumn leaves painting a picture against an otherwise gray sky. Maybe this would be an opportunity for us both, to talk openly about everything unspoken between us since her passing. As we walked side by side along winding paths lined with trees shedding their leaves like old memories falling away, something shifted within me again, I wanted nothing more than for him to feel safe sharing his feelings without fear or judgment. But just as we reached a secluded bench surrounded by whispering trees and soft rustling leaves overhead, our moment shattered when headlights illuminated us from afar. They belonged to my husband returning home earlier than expected from work. "Lucas," he called out with surprise evident in his voice as he approached us slowly but surely, his gaze flickering between us with suspicion brewing beneath its surface. In that instant before confrontation unfolded before us like an unwanted storm cloud looming overhead, I realized just how precarious our situation truly was, and how quickly secrets could unravel everything we had tried so hard not only for ourselves but also for each other amidst such profound loss. And so began yet another chapter filled with uncertainty, one where every choice carried consequences far heavier than either of us could have anticipated, where love intertwined with grief would test boundaries neither knew existed until now. As the weight of our unspoken feelings hung thick in the air, I sensed my stepson's vulnerability more than ever. It was as if we were both caught in a web of shared sorrow, each thread binding us closer together. I needed to find a way to connect with him, to show him that he was not alone in his grief. One evening, while preparing dinner in the kitchen, I heard laughter echoing from the living room. Startled, I turned to see him watching an old comedy on television. The sound was unexpected yet comforting. I approached cautiously, and for a moment, we exchanged smiles that felt like a bridge over troubled waters. "You remember this one?" he asked, his eyes brightening. "Of course," I replied, trying to match his enthusiasm. "It used to make your mother laugh so much." As we watched together, the tension eased slightly. We shared a few jokes about the characters on screen and even managed to laugh at ourselves. It felt like a small victory against the shadow of loss that loomed over us. But as we sat there, my heart wrestled with guilt. His mother had been gone only a few months, and here I was trying to forge new memories with him. Could it be right? The laughter faded as quickly as it came when I remembered my own feelings, conflicted and complicated. Just then, my phone buzzed on the counter, pulling me from my thoughts. I picked it up and saw an anonymous text message flash across the screen. "I know what's happening between you two." My heart raced as fear gripped me. Who could have sent this? What did they know? I glanced at my stepson, who remained oblivious to my internal turmoil but seemed lost in thought. Later that night, unable to shake off the unease from the text message, I decided to confront him about how he was feeling, about everything that had changed since his mother's passing. We sat together on the porch under the stars, their distant glow mirrored our own flickering connection. "I miss her," he said softly after several moments of silence. "Sometimes it feels like she's still here." His vulnerability struck me deeply, it mirrored my own hidden feelings toward him. In that moment of honesty, something shifted between us, an unspoken understanding that transcended words. Before I could fully process what was happening, our faces drew closer together until our lips met briefly, nos besamos, in a moment filled with both tenderness and confusion. It left me breathless. Part of me wanted to pull away while another part craved more connection. "What just happened?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," I admitted truthfully. "This is all so complicated." The air around us felt charged with emotion as we pulled apart slightly but stayed close enough for comfort. The thrill of what had just transpired weighed heavily on my conscience. Could we navigate this new territory without losing ourselves? Days passed with lingering tension hanging over our interactions. Every time we brushed against each other or exchanged glances filled with meaning, guilt gnawed at me relentlessly. How could I reconcile these feelings while honoring his mother's memory? One afternoon at the local farmer's market, a bustling place alive with vibrant colors and scents, I spotted him browsing through fresh produce stalls nearby. He looked lost in thought again. Perhaps he too felt burdened by our recent encounter. "Hey," I called out softly as I approached him. He turned around and smiled faintly but quickly masked it with seriousness. I've been thinking about what happened. Me too, I confessed quietly. We need to talk. As we wandered through rows of ripe tomatoes and fragrant herbs, we found ourselves sitting on a bench tucked away from prying eyes. The chatter of families around us faded into white noise as we focused solely on each other. I don't want you to feel guilty, he said suddenly, looking straight into my eyes with sincerity that made my heart race again. It's not just guilt, I replied hesitantly. It's fear too, fear of what this means for both of us. His expression softened as he reached out for my hand, an act that felt both innocent and dangerous at once, but before anything further could happen between us again, an urgent thought crossed my mind. What if someone saw us? Just then, a familiar figure appeared in the distance, my husband walking toward us with purpose etched across his face. Panic surged through me as I realized how vulnerable we truly were at that moment. Every secret could unravel before our eyes if he discovered anything amiss between us. We need to go, I whispered urgently as adrenaline coursed through me. He nodded slowly but didn't move right away. Instead, he kept holding on to my hand tightly as if anchoring himself against an impending storm brewing within our lives, a storm neither of us knew how to weather without losing everything we held dear. And just like that, the tension thickened again as reality set back in, everything hung in balance now more than ever before. I felt the weight of his hand in mine, a tether to the moment we were sharing. The cafe's dim light flickered, casting shadows that mirrored our unspoken fears. I had to break the silence. We need to talk about what's happening between us. His gaze dropped, and I could see the conflict churning within him. I know, he replied softly, his voice barely above a whisper. But what if it changes everything? I wanted to tell him that change was already here, lurking in the corners of our lives. It was impossible to ignore the feelings that had blossomed since his mother's passing. Yet, societal expectations loomed over us like a dark cloud. As we sat there, memories of my late husband drifted into my mind. He had been my anchor, steady and reliable. But now, I felt lost in this new world where my stepson seemed to fill a void I hadn't realized existed. I remembered how he used to laugh at my terrible cooking and how those moments felt like home. Now, laughter felt bittersweet. Suddenly, something caught my eye, the bracelet resting on the table between us. It gleamed under the cafe's flickering lights as if urging me to explore its secrets further. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. There was an inscription hidden beneath its surface, words that seemed familiar but elusive at the same time. What does it say? He asked, leaning closer with curiosity etched on his face. It's a message, I stammered as I squinted at it more closely. It says forever in our hearts. The words struck me deeply, they echoed the bond we were starting to form, one that felt both beautiful and forbidden. He looked away, his expression clouded with uncertainty. I don't want to hurt you or ruin anything, he murmured, but there was a flicker of hope in his eyes that suggested otherwise. We kissed, I said suddenly, surprising myself with the admission. The truth spilled out before I could stop it. It was a moment of vulnerability that changed everything between us once again. His cheeks flushed as he processed my words. That night, it meant something. The tension shifted, we both understood that crossing this line would alter our lives irreversibly. Just then, an old friend of mine entered the cafe, a familiar face from years past who knew me well enough to sense when something was amiss. She approached our table with an inquisitive look that made my heart race. Luna? Is everything all right? She asked directly, her eyes darting between us as if trying to piece together a puzzle she wasn't meant to solve. We're fine, I replied too quickly, but her raised eyebrow indicated she didn't believe me. Are you sure? You seem different. I forced a smile while feeling exposed under her scrutiny. Just adjusting to some changes. She didn't press further but lingered for another moment before leaving us alone again. The air felt charged after her departure. An unspoken agreement hung between us. Whatever bond we were forming needed careful navigation amidst prying eyes and judgmental whispers from those who might suspect our connection. "I don't want anyone else getting involved," he said firmly as he leaned back slightly in his chair. "This is about us." "Yes," I replied quietly but firmly. "But we have to be careful." As we left the cafe together, an unsettling thought crossed my mind. What if someone saw us? The world outside felt suddenly vast and full of potential dangers lurking just beyond our reach. We walked down familiar streets lined with autumn leaves swirling around our feet like memories caught in time, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing within me. My heart raced as we neared home, every step echoed with uncertainty about what lay ahead for both of us. Suddenly, he stopped short outside our house and turned toward me with intensity in his eyes. "What if we just let go? What if we let ourselves feel this fully?" His question hung heavy in the air. It was tempting yet terrifying at once. Could we really allow ourselves such freedom? Wouldn't it risk everything? Before I could respond, he stepped closer again, his presence magnetic, and for a fleeting moment, our lips met again softly as if testing boundaries once more. Nuestros labios se encontraron briefly before reality crashed back around us like waves against a shore eroding beneath their weight. The kiss ignited something deep within me, a longing intertwined with fear, but before either of us could dwell on its significance further, an unexpected sound shattered our fragile bubble. A car pulled up behind me, my husband's vehicle glinting ominously under streetlights like an unwelcome omen looming over this delicate situation we were navigating together. "Luna?" His voice called from inside as he stepped out into the night air, an interruption that sent chills racing down my spine even though part of me knew this moment would come eventually. I turned back towards my stepson one last time before facing whatever storm awaited inside. His expression mirrored mine, uncertainty mingled with desire, and for now all we could do was brace ourselves for what lay ahead. I stepped into the house, the familiar scent of coffee and lingering memories enveloping me. The warmth inside contrasted sharply with the chill that had settled in my bones. My husband was already at the kitchen table, papers strewn about as he prepared for another long night of work. I could feel his eyes on me, searching for something unspoken. "Everything okay?" he asked, his tone casual but laced with concern. I nodded, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than a genuine expression. I wanted to tell him everything, the weight of my heartache and confusion, but I couldn't risk it. Not yet. I busied myself in the kitchen, pouring a cup of coffee and trying to ignore the thoughts swirling in my mind. The kiss lingered there, a reminder of what had almost happened between my stepson and me. We had shared more than just a moment. We had crossed an invisible line that now felt impossible to erase. As I stirred my coffee, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. My heart raced as I exchanged glances with my husband. "I'll get it," he said, rising from his seat. A part of me hoped it wasn't who I feared it might be. When he opened the door, it was an old friend from our neighborhood, a woman named Clara who had always been too curious for her own good. "Hi. Just thought I'd drop by," she said cheerfully, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Her presence felt intrusive at that moment. "Clara," I greeted her tightly, forcing another smile as she settled into our living room. She quickly began chatting away about local gossip and her recent trip to the farmer's market, oblivious to the tension hanging in the air. My husband returned to his papers while Clara prattled on about her finds at the market, fresh tomatoes and artisanal cheeses, and I struggled to focus on her words. Instead, my mind wandered back to my stepson's face when we'd almost kissed, how vulnerable he had looked in that moment. "I saw your son at the market yesterday," Clara mentioned casually, snapping me back to reality. "He seemed a bit off, like something was bothering him." My stomach dropped at her observation. It confirmed my fears that he was still struggling with his mother's death. "Yeah, he's been dealing with a lot," I replied cautiously. Clara raised an eyebrow knowingly but didn't press further as she continued discussing trivial matters that felt increasingly irrelevant amidst my inner turmoil. After she left, silence enveloped us again like a thick fog. My husband resumed his work while I stared out the window into the darkening evening sky. A sense of dread washed over me as I contemplated what lay ahead. Would we ever return to normal? Could we even define what normal meant anymore? Later that night, after dinner was finished and dishes were washed, I found myself wandering into our living room where my stepson often spent time alone, lost in thought or memories of his mother. The space felt heavy with unspoken words between us. I sat down on the edge of his chair, an invitation disguised as concern, and asked softly if he wanted to talk about anything weighing on his mind. "I'm fine," he replied too quickly, avoiding eye contact while fidgeting with an old baseball cap resting on his knee. "Are you sure?" My heart raced at how close we were sitting together now. Our knees nearly touched as I leaned in slightly closer. He sighed heavily before finally meeting my gaze, a flicker of vulnerability shining through those dark eyes filled with pain and loss. "I just miss her, sometimes it feels like no one understands." In that moment, something shifted between us, an unspoken connection ignited by shared grief and longing for comfort amidst chaos. Without thinking, without caution, our lips met briefly, a fleeting brush that sent shockwaves through both of us before pulling away abruptly. "What just happened?" he whispered breathlessly. "I don't know," I admitted shakily as reality crashed back around us like waves against rocks, reminding me of everything we stood to lose if we pursued this path any further. "I shouldn't have done that," he said quietly but firmly, his expression filled with regret mixed with desire still lingering beneath the surface. "Neither should I," I replied softly while fighting against tears threatening to spill over from deep within me, a mixture of guilt and longing intertwining like vines choking out sunlight from both our hearts. Just then came another knock at the door, this time louder than before, as if fate itself demanded our attention once more amidst this fragile moment between us both. Who could it be? My voice trembled slightly as dread crept back into every corner of my mind once again. My stepson stood up abruptly while glancing toward me anxiously before heading toward the front door, leaving behind an atmosphere thickened by unresolved feelings lingering between us, still hanging heavy in each breath drawn thereafter. As he opened it wide enough for whoever stood beyond its threshold, a shadowy figure loomed outside, the air shifted ominously around us both. The door creaked open, revealing a familiar face that sent a chill down my spine. It was Luis, an old family friend, who had visited often during happier times. Now, his presence felt like an intrusion. "I didn't expect to find you here," he said, eyeing my stepson with a mix of concern and curiosity. I could sense the tension rising, thickening the air even more. "Just checking in," I replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. My heart raced as I glanced at my stepson, who stood frozen in place, caught between his past and present. Luis stepped inside, his gaze flickering between us as if trying to piece together the puzzle of our strained relationship. "How are you both doing?" he asked, but it felt like an interrogation. Before I could respond, my stepson spoke up. "I'm fine." His voice was flat and unconvincing. The weight of unspoken words hung heavily in the room. Luis shifted awkwardly, sensing the discomfort. "I just wanted to see how you were coping after everything." The mention of loss hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. "We're managing," I said quickly, eager to deflect any deeper inquiries about our complicated emotions. "Thank you for checking on us." As Luis nodded, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, a flash of silver on my stepson's wrist. It was the bracelet I had found earlier. Its significance weighed heavily on me now. Luis noticed too and raised an eyebrow. "Is that new?" he asked casually but probing enough to unsettle me further. My heart sank at the thought of him questioning its origin or meaning. Just a little something, my stepson replied evasively, pulling his sleeve down to cover it as if shielding it from prying eyes. Luis's presence lingered longer than I had anticipated. He seemed determined to unravel whatever secrets lay between us. After what felt like an eternity of awkward small talk, he finally excused himself, leaving us alone again in the heavy silence that followed him out the door. As soon as he left, my stepson turned toward me with urgency in his eyes. "We need to talk," he said firmly. The gravity in his tone made my stomach tighten with apprehension. This wasn't just another casual conversation about everyday life anymore. "About what?" I asked cautiously, knowing full well what was at stake between us now, the boundaries we were testing with each passing moment together. He took a deep breath before speaking again. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine." My heart raced as he stepped closer to me, his vulnerability laid bare before me like an open book filled with raw emotions and uncharted territories we had yet to explore. "I feel it too," I admitted softly. It was a truth that had been simmering beneath the surface for far too long now. The connection we shared was undeniable and growing stronger by the day. "We should meet tonight," he suggested suddenly. Urgency laced his words as if daring me to accept this leap into unknown territory together once more, this time without any masks or pretenses between us. My mind raced at the thought of being seen together outside our home. What if someone recognized us? What would they think? Yet the pull towards him was intoxicating and impossible to resist any longer. Both fear and excitement coursed through me simultaneously. "Where?" I asked hesitantly, but knew deep down that there was only one place we could go, the abandoned cafe on Maple Street where we'd shared fleeting moments before amidst shadows cast by flickering lights from old neon signs long forgotten by time itself. "The cafe," he replied simply as if reading my thoughts exactly. There was no need for further discussion on this matter. It felt right despite all risks involved in meeting there again tonight under such clandestine circumstances. As dusk settled over our quiet neighborhood later that evening, anticipation bubbled within me while dread gnawed at my insides simultaneously. A volatile mix of emotions threatening to spill over into chaos should anyone discover us together again after everything that had transpired thus far since her passing. Arriving at the cafe felt surreal. Its peeling paint echoed memories from nights spent lost in conversation with each other, moments that now held deeper meaning than ever before given our current state of affairs surrounding loss and grief intertwined with something else entirely new forming between us both. He arrived shortly after me, his silhouette framed against dim light spilling through cracked windows, illuminating shadows dancing across worn wooden tables scattered throughout this once bustling establishment now faded into obscurity alongside our own hidden truths waiting patiently beneath layers accumulated throughout time. "I thought you wouldn't come," he murmured breathlessly upon finding me seated alone at our usual table tucked away from prying eyes. Relief washed over him as hope flickered brightly within those depths filled with uncertainty lingering just beneath surface-level smiles exchanged earlier today back home. "I wouldn't miss this chance for anything," I replied earnestly while feeling warmth radiate through every fiber within myself upon seeing him here before me once again. An undeniable spark igniting within shared glances exchanged silently between two souls yearning for connection amidst chaos surrounding them both outside these walls. As we talked about everything and nothing all at once, the world outside faded away into oblivion, leaving only echoes reverberating around us filled with laughter mingled alongside whispers shared intimately, weaving tales spun from threads woven tightly around hearts entwined together despite circumstances beyond control threatening their bond, constantly hovering nearby like specters haunting their every move. Then came a moment when silence enveloped us completely. A pause pregnant with unspoken words lingering heavily until finally breaking free when our lips met, unexpectedly soft yet fervently igniting flames burning brightly deep inside where boundaries blurred, seamlessly merging realities lived separately until now. Suddenly though, a voice broke through this fragile cocoon enveloping us both, unexpectedly shattering illusions crafted carefully over countless days spent navigating treacherous waters filled with grief-laden memories intertwined alongside newfound desires blossoming forth. against all odds. "Isn't that your stepson?" A stranger's voice rang out loudly, echoing across empty spaces surrounding them, leaving both frozen, momentarily caught off guard by unforeseen intrusion threatening their sanctuary built upon fragile foundations barely holding steady against turbulent tides crashing relentlessly against shores lined precariously close together yet still so far apart. The stranger's voice lingered in the air, thick with implication. I turned instinctively, my heart racing as I searched for the source of the disruption. My stepson stood beside me, his expression a mix of surprise and apprehension. The weight of our secret hung heavily between us, yet the world outside our bubble felt suddenly intrusive. "Let's go," I whispered urgently, pulling him toward the back exit of the cafe. The peeling paint and dim light had once felt like a refuge, but now it seemed suffocating. We slipped out into the cool night air, hearts pounding in unison as we made our way down the alley behind the building. The shadows enveloped us, providing a temporary cloak of safety. Once we were away from prying eyes, he turned to me, his brow furrowed. "What if they saw us?" His voice trembled slightly, revealing his vulnerability. I could feel my own guilt weighing down on me like a heavy shroud. "I don't know," I admitted quietly. "But we can't keep doing this if it puts us at risk." He stepped closer, searching my face for answers I wasn't sure I could give. "I don't want to lose what we have," he confessed. In that moment, something shifted within me. The bond we had formed felt undeniable and real. "Neither do I," I replied softly, feeling a surge of emotions that both thrilled and terrified me. We stood there for what felt like an eternity before he reached for my hand. As our fingers intertwined, something inside me cracked wide open, a rush of warmth flooded through my body as if igniting a spark that had long been dormant. It was in that instant that we confessed our feelings aloud for the first time, words spilled forth in hushed tones filled with longing and fear. "I care about you," he murmured. "More than I should." "Me too," I replied, my heart racing at the implications of those words. The world outside faded away as we leaned in closer until our foreheads touched, an unspoken promise hanging between us like delicate threads woven into a tapestry of shared grief and newfound connection. In that intimate moment, time lost all meaning. It felt as though nothing else mattered except for us standing there together against everything else life had thrown at us. Then came an unexpected shift. The sound of my phone vibrating in my pocket shattered our fragile cocoon once more. I pulled it out hesitantly to see my husband's name flashing on the screen. Panic surged through me as I realized how precarious our situation truly was. Every second spent here risked not just our secret but also everything we held dear. "It's him," I said quietly, dread pooling in my stomach. "Answer it," he urged softly but firmly. "No. Not like this." My voice was barely above a whisper as uncertainty clawed at me from within. I couldn't bear to think about what would happen if he sensed anything amiss. As I hesitated with trembling hands over the phone screen, another thought struck me. It was no longer just about us anymore. There were lives intertwined with ours that would be affected by every choice we made moving forward. Finally summoning enough courage to silence my phone instead, I looked back at him determinedly. His expression mirrored mine, fear mixed with resolve as we faced this new reality together. "Let's talk more tomorrow," he suggested tentatively. I nodded slowly but felt an uneasy knot tightening in my chest. Tomorrow seemed far too uncertain now given how quickly things could change around us without warning, especially when secrets lay buried beneath layers upon layers of grief and longing still waiting to be unearthed completely. The next morning arrived with an uneasy stillness hanging over everything around me, like a storm brewing just beyond sight waiting to unleash its fury upon unsuspecting souls caught unaware amidst their daily routines filled with mundane tasks and obligations pulling them further away from happiness each passing day. As I prepared breakfast in silence while glancing out towards the street where memories lingered like ghosts haunting familiar places where laughter once echoed freely before loss had cast its shadow over our lives forevermore, I couldn't shake off this feeling gnawing inside, urging me towards something greater than myself, something worth fighting for amidst chaos swirling around, relentlessly threatening to consume all hope left behind in its wake. Just then came another vibration, this time from my husband's phone buzzing next to mine on the kitchen table, demanding attention, urgently drawing focus away from thoughts lingering on what lay ahead, waiting patiently beneath surface tensions simmering below, readying themselves for confrontation soon enough. With trepidation settling deep within, bones aching under pressure mounting, steadily rising higher day by day, it was clear. Choices made yesterday would echo loudly throughout today, shaping futures yet unknown unfolding right before eyes, watching closely, waiting patiently, hoping against hope things might turn out all right after all, despite odds stacked heavily against them. As I reached for my husband's phone, a sense of dread washed over me. The screen displayed a message that made my heart race. "I know what's going on," it read. My fingers trembled as I set the phone down. My mind raced with thoughts of my stepson and the fragile connection we had forged. The weight of our secret felt heavier than ever. Later that evening, my husband returned home later than usual, his demeanor tense. I could feel the atmosphere thick with unspoken words. He glanced at me, searching for something in my expression. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with suspicion. I nodded, forcing a smile that felt like a mask. I needed to distance myself from my stepson. The guilt gnawed at me, and I couldn't let it consume us both. But every time I tried to pull away, he reached out in ways that made it impossible to forget him. Just yesterday, he sent me a message, "I miss you." Those words lingered in my mind like a haunting melody. The following day, while shopping at the local farmer's market, I bumped into an old friend from college. She was vibrant and full of life, her laughter echoing through the stalls filled with fresh produce and flowers. "You look different," she remarked, her eyes narrowing slightly as if she sensed something amiss. "Everything all right?" "Just busy," I replied too quickly, glancing away to hide the truth swirling within me. As we chatted about mundane topics, children and work, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being cornered by my own choices. My friend's probing gaze felt like an interrogation. She knew me too well to accept surface-level answers. That evening, as I sat on our porch sipping tea, I spotted my stepson walking down the street toward our house. He looked troubled and lost in thought. When he reached me, his expression shifted from concern to relief upon seeing me. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. "Of course," I replied cautiously. We moved inside where the air felt charged with unspoken tension. He took a deep breath before speaking again. "I need to tell you something." His words hung in the air like an impending storm ready to break loose at any moment. "I've been lying about everything," he confessed finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want you to worry." "Worry about what?" My heart raced as fear gripped me tightly. He hesitated before revealing a secret that turned my world upside down. "Dad found out about us." Shock coursed through me like ice water. Everything around us seemed to freeze in that moment. How much did he know? What would happen next? Before I could respond, the door swung open abruptly. My husband stood there with an expression that sent chills down my spine. "I knew it," he declared coldly, locking eyes with both of us in accusation. "Dad." My stepson protested desperately while I struggled to find words amidst the chaos unraveling before us. "Don't dad me," he snapped back sharply as anger flared between them like fire igniting dry kindling. Tension crackled in the air as they faced off against each other, a confrontation brewing that threatened to explode and shatter any semblance of peace we had left intact. In that moment of confrontation, a split second where time seemed suspended, I realized how deeply tangled we had become in this web of secrets and lies spun tighter each day, threatening everything around us, including our fragile family unit. My heart raced as uncertainty loomed large over our futures. Choices made now would force consequences neither of us could escape from easily, no matter how hard we tried. Then came another vibration, this time from my own phone lying forgotten on the table, a reminder that life outside this turmoil continued unabated while ours spiraled dangerously close towards an edge where no return awaited. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. The messages from him had become more frequent, each one tugging at my resolve. I couldn't ignore the way he expressed his feelings, how he seemed to understand the turmoil I was experiencing. It was unsettling yet comforting. "I miss you," one of his texts read. Simple words that held so much weight. Days passed, and I found myself wandering through the local farmers' market, surrounded by the vibrant colors of fresh produce and the chatter of families enjoying their Saturday morning. I tried to lose myself in the mundane, but thoughts of him crept in like shadows. The laughter of children nearby reminded me of the innocence lost in our complicated lives. I picked up a ripe tomato, its weight grounding me momentarily. "Are you okay?" an old friend approached me unexpectedly. Her expression was laced with concern as she studied my face. "You seem distracted." I forced a smile, knowing she could sense something was off. "Just a lot on my mind," I replied tersely, hoping to deflect her probing questions. As I walked away, her words echoed in my mind, had she known something about us? The thought sent a chill down my spine. The emotional distance I sought felt increasingly impossible to maintain when reminders of him were everywhere. Back home that evening, I found myself staring at the bracelet again. Its hidden message seemed to call out to me. Suddenly, my husband entered the room with an air of tension surrounding him. "Where have you been?" he asked sharply, his eyes narrowing as he took in my distracted demeanor. "Just out for groceries," I replied too quickly, feeling guilt rise within me like bile. He didn't buy it, his gaze lingered on me longer than necessary. "You've been acting strange lately." His voice dropped as if he were probing for something deeper than mere grocery shopping. My stomach twisted at his words. It felt like he was watching me closely, piecing together fragments of truths I wasn't ready to confront. That night, unable to sleep, I picked up my phone and opened his last message again, "I miss you." It felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters, yet it also reminded me of how tangled we had become. Just then, another text pinged through, "Can we meet tomorrow?" My heart raced with anticipation and dread simultaneously. I hesitated before responding. Every decision now felt monumental and fraught with consequences that could destroy everything we had built, or perhaps save us from this unbearable tension. But just as I contemplated my reply, the sound of footsteps echoed from downstairs, a reminder that life continued unbidden around us. The next day arrived with an overcast sky that matched my mood perfectly as I made my way to our usual meeting spot, the abandoned cafe on the outskirts of town where whispers of secrets hung thick in the air like dust motes dancing in sunlight filtering through broken windows. As soon as he walked in, all thoughts fled from my mind. It was just him and me against everything else outside those peeling walls. He looked different today, more determined yet vulnerable all at once, and it made my heart ache for him even more. "I've been thinking," he started hesitantly after we settled into our usual corner booth shrouded in shadows. "About us." My breath caught at his words. They held promises and fears entwined together like vines creeping up a wall. "Me too," I admitted softly, unsure where this conversation would lead us both but feeling compelled nonetheless to explore these feelings openly for once. But before he could respond further, a familiar face appeared at the entrance. My husband stepped inside unexpectedly with an intense look on his face that sent chills down my spine. Our eyes locked across the room. Dread washed over me as reality crashed back into focus. "What are you doing here?" My voice trembled slightly as panic surged within me while trying to gauge his intentions through narrowed eyes filled with suspicion. "I came looking for you," he stated bluntly while scanning the cafe's interior before landing on our table where we sat frozen in time, caught between two worlds colliding violently against one another without warning or mercy. My heart pounded furiously against my ribcage as uncertainty loomed large over our futures once more. Choices made now would force consequences neither of us could escape from easily no matter how hard we tried. "I came looking for you," he stated bluntly while scanning the cafe's interior before landing on our table where we sat frozen in time, caught between two worlds colliding violently against one another without warning or mercy. My heart pounded furiously against my ribcage as uncertainty loomed large over our futures once more. Choices made now would force consequences neither of us could escape from easily no matter how hard we tried. I glanced at my stepson, his expression a mix of defiance and fear. "We can't do this anymore," I whispered, but the words felt hollow in the air between us. The tension thickened as my husband approached, his brow furrowed with concern. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice low yet commanding. I exchanged a quick glance with my stepson, who looked ready to bolt. "Just catching up," I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than a genuine expression. The weight of our secrets pressed heavily upon me. "Let's go home," my husband insisted, his tone leaving little room for argument. My stepson shifted in his seat, glancing out the window as if searching for an escape route. I could sense his turmoil and felt the same pull of longing that had driven us together in those stolen moments. But now, exposed and vulnerable, I feared what would happen next. As we walked to the car, I noticed my husband's hand gripping the steering wheel tightly. He was silent but clearly brooding over whatever suspicions he harbored about our relationship. The drive home felt interminable, each passing streetlight illuminated fragments of thoughts swirling in my mind. Was it worth risking everything for fleeting moments of connection? Once inside the house, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. "You've been distant lately," my husband said suddenly, breaking the silence that hung like a thick fog around us. "Is there something you want to tell me?" His eyes bore into mine with an intensity that made me question whether he truly knew what lay beneath the surface. "I'm just trying to adjust," I replied cautiously, avoiding his gaze as shame washed over me like cold water. My heart raced as I thought about the bracelet hidden away in my jewelry box, the one that symbolized everything unspoken between me and my stepson. Later that evening, as I sorted through some old boxes in search of distraction, I stumbled upon that bracelet again. The delicate piece glimmering under the dim light of my bedroom lamp reminded me of all we had shared in secret. Memories flooded back. Laughter at the cafe and whispered confessions beneath starlit skies. It was bittersweet and painful to recall. Just then, I heard a soft knock at my door. It was him, my stepson, standing there with an expression that mirrored mine, lost and seeking solace amid chaos. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly, stepping into the room without waiting for an answer. I nodded slowly as he closed the door behind him and leaned against it for support. "I feel lost without you," he admitted softly, vulnerability etched across his face like an open book revealing deep emotions hidden from others' eyes. "We need to be careful," I warned gently but felt torn inside. Every word seemed inadequate against what we both craved yet feared most, losing each other completely or losing everything else around us instead. His gaze dropped to the floor before returning to mine with newfound determination shining through uncertainty. "I can't pretend anymore," he confessed earnestly. The weight of those words settled heavily between us, a truth neither of us could ignore any longer. Suddenly, loud voices erupted from downstairs. It was family gathering time, an occasion meant for laughter and connection but now felt more like a pressure cooker ready to explode under scrutiny from relatives who had no idea about our complicated web of emotions. "Let's go down together," he suggested hesitantly before opening the door slightly ajar to glimpse what awaited us beyond its threshold, a world filled with expectations and judgment lurking just outside our sanctuary where honesty thrived instead. As we descended into chaos filled with chatter and forced smiles masking deeper issues lurking beneath surface-level interactions among family members gathered around food-laden tables decorated festively for autumn celebrations ahead, I realized cracks were forming everywhere around us, not just within ourselves but also within relationships strained by secrets held too tightly for too long. In that moment, surrounded by loved ones oblivious to turmoil brewing just beneath their laughter, I understood something crucial. This facade could only last so long before it shattered completely under pressure unleashed by truths yearning desperately for acknowledgement amidst silence screaming louder than any spoken word ever could. The evening wore on as conversations flowed around us like leaves caught in a brisk wind, some light-hearted while others hinted at deeper rifts forming within family dynamics left unaddressed over time spent together yet apart emotionally speaking. Just then someone mentioned how wonderful it would be if everyone could gather regularly. My heart sank further into despair knowing full well how fragile our situation had become since secrets began intertwining lives once thought separate forevermore. I glanced at him beside me, his expression mirrored mine, a blend of hope intertwined with dread, and wondered if perhaps this gathering would lead to revelations neither of us were prepared for yet desperately needed nonetheless. Then came an unexpected twist. Someone mentioned wanting pictures taken together. A sudden urge surged through me fueled by fear mingled with longing. What if this was our moment? What if capturing memories meant sealing fates irrevocably tied together despite consequences looming ominously overhead? I took a deep breath preparing myself mentally while holding on to fleeting moments shared earlier today when nothing else mattered except connection forged anew despite obstacles standing firmly between paths chosen long ago. And just like that, the camera clicked capturing not just images frozen in time but also fragments woven intricately into fabric binding lives forever changed by choices made under circumstances beyond control. I stood there, heart racing, as the weight of my choices pressed heavily on my chest. The abandoned cafe loomed before me, a sanctuary of secrets and whispered confessions. I had told him I needed space, yet here I was, drawn back to the very place where everything had shifted. The sound of footsteps echoed behind me, and I turned to see him approaching, his expression a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, concern etched across his face. It was a question that held so much more than mere words. I nodded, but doubt clouded my mind. "I just wanted to think," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, the familiar warmth radiating from him like a beacon in the dim light. "We need to talk about this," he said firmly. "About us." My heart sank at the reality of it all. The tangled web we had woven felt both exhilarating and terrifying. As we settled into a corner booth, memories flooded back, our laughter shared over coffee, moments that felt stolen from time itself. But today was different, an undercurrent of tension hung in the air. "What if someone sees us?" I asked anxiously. "Let them," he replied defiantly. "I can't keep pretending anymore." His words struck a chord deep within me. My mind raced with thoughts of societal judgment and family ties. Suddenly, my phone buzzed on the table. A message from an unknown number flashed across the screen. "I know what's happening between you two." My breath caught in my throat as fear washed over me. Who could it be? "Is everything all right?" he inquired, noticing my sudden change in demeanor. I hesitated before showing him the message. His expression hardened as he read it. "This isn't good," he muttered under his breath, glancing around as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. Panic surged through me. Our secret felt more precarious than ever. "We have to be careful," I urged him, anxiety tightening its grip on my chest. "If this gets out," my voice trailed off as I considered the consequences, my husband's wrath and our fractured family dynamic. He leaned closer, desperation in his eyes. "We can't let fear dictate our lives," he insisted passionately. But could we really defy everything we knew? Just then, a familiar figure walked past the cafe window, my husband. He paused for a moment as if sensing something was off before continuing down the street without looking back. My heart raced. How long had he been watching? "Did you see that?" I gasped, panic rising within me like a tidal wave threatening to crash down upon us both. "I don't think he knows anything yet," he replied quickly but with uncertainty lacing his tone. "I can't do this anymore," I blurted out suddenly as clarity struck me like lightning. This tangled relationship was spiraling out of control. "What do you mean?" His eyes widened with confusion and hurt. "I mean, we need to stop meeting like this." The words tasted bitter on my tongue as they left my lips. He looked crushed but nodded slowly in understanding. "If that's what you want." Yet even as I spoke those words of finality, doubt crept into my thoughts like an unwelcome guest at a gathering meant for celebration. The door swung open abruptly, the cafe's bell chiming ominously, as another customer entered. A chill ran down my spine when I recognized her, an old friend who had always been too observant for her own good. "Fancy seeing you here," she exclaimed cheerfully but with an edge that made me uneasy. "Just grabbing coffee," I replied hastily while avoiding her piercing gaze that seemed to search for deeper truths hidden beneath our casual facade. My stepson shifted uncomfortably beside me as she continued chatting about mundane topics while subtly probing into our lives with questions that danced dangerously close to uncovering our secret connection. Finally excusing herself with a knowing smile that felt almost predatory, she left us alone once more, but not without leaving behind an invisible thread of tension binding us together tighter than ever before. "What now?" he asked quietly after she departed like a shadow slipping away into twilight's embrace. I sighed deeply while staring blankly at the table strewn with sugar packets and napkins, the weight of unspoken truths pressing heavily upon us both again amidst lingering uncertainty hanging thick in the air surrounding our fragile bond forged through grief and longing. Just then another notification chimed on my phone, a new message from that same unknown number: "You're being watched." My heart dropped into my stomach as dread washed over me once again. This was no longer just about us, it was about survival against forces beyond our control threatening everything we'd built together amidst chaos swirling around every corner. In that moment of realization came clarity. Choices made would have consequences far greater than anticipated.